And he did not laugh, and he did not say, well, maybe in 5 years, dear. He was up for anything, I think. But I don't think that sort of thing occurred to him. Oh, you want to? Yes, we will do that. And I think he said he had never taught them. He said, they're not that popular with people. I'm so glad. And they're well, we all know they're really wonderful. So it began. I had a lesson every other week for maybe half a year, and then every third week. And as the years went by, I worked with him probably 15 years. The lessons became further and further spaced apart. And at one point, rather early on, he said, well, you should play a program. And I said, me? Are you kidding? Not a bit. What are you doing this for? And I don't know, I said for the betterment of my family and general cultural understanding, whatever. And he said, bourgeois. Well, that was my mother's favorite expression. And he said, you have thoughts about this repertoire, and the only way you can communicate them is to perform. And so today is Flag Day, is it not?
Yes,
yes. So in 1978 on Flag Day was the first day that I walked on the stage. I had auditioned in the small hall at Lincoln Center and played a program there. I had played programs for a few years elsewhere. And his studio was on 68th Street, not far from Lincoln Center. And at the party afterwards, somebody said, aren't you really, isn't it wonderful, blah, blah. And he said, well, it's just a few blocks across, down the street. So it was to say, don't take yourself that serious. I was not. Anyway, so that, I think, the last time I saw him, I should really tell you, I had seen the movie Heat and Dust, and I admired the Schumann G-sharp minor variation of the Variation Symphonique, and didn't know what it was, and I found out, and I thought, oh God, I have to learn the whole piece in order to play. I mean, you can't just get up and play the G-sharp minor variation, that's crass. I learned them over about a year and a half by myself. I did a presentation at the Matthay festival to show how I actually learned them from Julian, analogizing each one to a different piece in which whatever pianistic situation came up. And I did that for him. He was in a, I guess they call it rest home. And he and two other very decrepit men were taken down to the basement where there was one of those big uprights that had been a wonderful piano. It was no more. And I did each variation individually and then turned to say something. He had lots of interesting things to say, very cogent, really wonderful. We went back to his room, and I noticed there was a second bed in his room, and I said, Julian, you have a roommate. And he exploded. And then he just slumped. And I saw that what he was able to do, it was wonderful. He was able to talk about the music so well, but that was not who he was really at the time. It was very sad. He was a friend, and he was a teacher, and he was a real original, and do read about him in Stephen's book. The book is worth reading too. Okay, so enough talk. My son, who is not here, is a mathematician. He's a mathematician who invented arithmetic when he was 4 and a half. And was a really good chess player at 5, and was doing algebra if somebody would read him the word problems, because he couldn't read. He was interesting to educate, and my husband and I sent him to various private schools. So he came home from school one day, very excited. He was about 11 years old, and he said, Mommy, do you know what haiku is? And I said, yes. He said, well, his wonderful English teacher had showed them haiku. And the English teacher hadn't made an assignment, but he had basically said, if you want, you can try it out. So we went up to his room. I never saw anything of the haiku after that. I didn't ask. But about a month later, I saw stuffed into a bookcase a lot of papers, and I pulled them out. He'd written 24, 25 haiku that afternoon. He never wrote another one. I sat down, started reading them, and they were quite sophisticated. And then I started hearing piano sounds, just the sounds that come out, different sounds. And I thought, okay, let's see where this leads. Anyway, I picked out 6, and I'm going to play 3 for you. And you have, so the publisher got in touch with me and said, we want to publish these. What would you think would be a good cover? Which surprised me, because the publisher always picked the cover. So my daughter Amy was 16, and she drew a wonderful drawing for the cover. She also drew a drawing for each of the haiku. And the publisher was enchanted. So that's how they're published. And you have the drawings, some of you have the drawings. And I'm going to start with number 4. The birds of the sky and the airplanes of the ground are alike. Oh my. The master of all is time, the universal ticker, like a stubborn wall. Dreams are similar to butterflies. Their shades vary and fly about. Now, the next has to do with writing something for a particular purpose. And I wanted to write a piece for early year students that demonstrated the use of the damper pedal, a piece that rises and falls on the use of the damper pedal. Too often I think the kids, I'm sure nobody in this room does this, but they just said, use pedal. Well, thank you very much. I always had the students, didn't have very young students, I will say. I wouldn't teach somebody 6 or 7. At any rate, and I had a lot of previously owned students, and that is slipped out one night when I was talking to your father. Occasionally my husband would come home and say, well, whom did you fire today? It wasn't meant in any mean way. It was, you're wasting your time and mine. And I remember saying to a student once, I tell you what, you go home and I'll practice. But it's only speaking the truth. Why bother this person? Would he rather be playing baseball? There's no way you can change that. Anyway, so I would always demonstrate the mechanism and how it works and so forth and how you apply it. So this is a piece called Bells. And bells, I think, do you all have bells?
Yes.
Yes, you all have bells. So bells, it does something that also beginners hardly ever get to do. Gets to play in the bass and somewhat in the treble, and it's all in half steps and whole steps, so somebody shouldn't get a nosebleed or something. So bells without the pedal is not a good recital piece. But if you apply the pedal makes the piece work. You also have the opportunity to teach something that Julian was very big on. If you have a repeated note, if a note is repeated 2, 3 times, 4 times, you phrase it, for goodness sakes. You don't just plunk your finger on it, and you figure out what the scope of the dynamic range and how it is applied. So this, I trust, is a good representation of bells. Oh, and it's in 5, so sue me. And I've heard over the years, they published this, I think I said, for about 35 years. People say that, kids say that that was their favorite piece. I wanted to give you just a little illustration from the Ravel waltzes of what Julian meant. I learned the waltzes in order. I didn't sort of learn the hard parts first. I just learned it in order. Anyway, so I was playing, there's an introduction, and then it goes. So Julian said, well, you have 2 phrases, and you have 3 A's. How are you going to phrase them? That was a new idea to me. And he said, well, you have 3 A's in the first phrase, right? Sorry. More and less. Or said there is no right way. There may be a better way, but there is no absolutely right or wrong. It is up to you to figure out how you do it. And when it comes in the second time, then maybe you do it differently. Maybe it's just a gradual, small crescendo. It's all incremental. But he said more than once, these are the things that make a performance really come alive. And most people don't notice what it is, but they notice that it is. And this was very useful information. I'm sure you give it and have gotten it all along the way. I see my 50 minutes are up, but I'm going to go to the last piece because I like it so much. Oh, he did say, I just want to say one thing about the pedal. One day he said to me, did you study the Beethoven Pathetique Sonata? No, I said. He said, well, in case you ever do, the opening is very difficult on the modern piano because it starts with this big C minor chord, right? Every single note, 1, 2. You have 3 C's, 2 G's. You have E flat, you have this E flat, which on the modern piano is really, that's the problem, that's a problem. And then it's marked forte piano. So then the next thing you hear is this first inversion of the C minor chord, right? And how do you do this in the clear? So you do this. You play, let go, re-engage, and then it's in the clear, right? And of course, while you're doing it, you count 30-second notes all the way through the passage, which made sense to me. Right? So that's little helpful hints from Elizabeth, or Julia, really. So I'm not going to get to that. But I wanted to play Trying Tones for you. This is a piece I didn't write for anybody for anything, except for me. Because I like, it has syncopation, and it has a funny title that, would you say it's a joke? Or a witticism, Trying Tones. It's
inside joke.
Inside joke, right. You have to speak the language in order to understand the joke of the title, right? And I think teachers found it hard to teach. I'm sure you've all known people who say, oh, first of all, they don't call it alla breve, they call it cut time, which I loathe. And then they say, oh, I always count in 4. And I think, oh, I'm not listening to you anymore. Okay. So I'm just going to play Trying Tones for you because I like it. And here we go. Oh, and it goes down to the bass again, right? So you have you can make a little noise with the piano. Thank you for listening.
Take any questions?
I don't know if there's time for questions.
One question, Liz. The first piece you played in a different key than what was printed. Was that your original conception of the piece?
Good for you, Terry. I wasn't going to say. I wrote it in F. Do you know who Lynn Freeman Olson was? He was my editor. And he said it has to be in G. And I said, no, it's in F. He said, I know it's in F. But for the teacher in Dubuque, it has to be in G. You have a B flat, you have an E flat, 2 black notes, and for God's sake, you have a C flat. You cannot do that in Dubuque's. So it's written in E. Very good, Terry. I wasn't going to point it out, but since you did, I can point you out. Yes, excellent. Yeah, he was a very good editor. He insisted on fingering, and I said fingering should be between the teacher and the student. So, evidently not. So this was really wonderful, and I'm so happy to be able to tell you about Julian, something about Julian. Yes. Okay.